A rocket has hit a shopping mall in the town of Kremenchuk in Poltava region of Ukraine. The city's mayor says the strike hit a very crowded place and that he was at the scene. It's also not clear how many people are dead or hurt from the attack. President Volodymyr Zelensky has reacted to the attack on Telegram, saying that 1,000 people were in the mall at the time of the strike. He said the mall posed no danger to the Russian army and posed no strategic value to the Russians. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's looking towards the war, forward to the war with Ukraine ending before the winter. He said this in an address to leaders on the second day of the G summit holding in the Bavarian Alps in Germany. Soon enough, they sit for a roundtable discussion to kick off the summit on Sunday. The leaders have been meeting since Sunday in the Bavarian Alps. President Joe Biden made a statement about the amount of money, new funds the U.S. would be given towards infrastructure development. At the end of Sunday's meeting, leaders at the G7 summit agreed on raising $600 million by 2027 for infrastructure development. Leaders also held bilateral talks. President Joe Biden holding one with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. A look at today's meeting where President Volodymyr Zelensky is looking forward to the end of the war with Russia. Macron.
G7 leaders are pledging support for Ukraine and have agreed to hike sanctions on Russia as the first working day of the summit got underway. A White House fact sheet said the leaders would stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes by cranking up sanctions on Russia over its war in the country, adding that they would continue to provide financial, humanitarian, military and diplomatic support. A senior U.S. official said the G7 leaders will commit to a new package of coordinated actions meant to raise pressure on Russia on Tuesday, as well as finalize plans for a price cap on Russian oil. The statement came after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to the leaders via video link. He asked the leaders for a broad range of military, economic and diplomatic support, according to a European official, adding that he wanted the war to end by winter. However, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who was hosting the summit in Bavaria, urged caution over the sanctions.
We are discussing all the topics that are on the agenda, especially staying united in supporting the Ukraine against the Russian aggression. And we understood that the policies of all our countries are very much aligned. And this is, I think, the good message, that we are taking tough decisions, that we are also cautious, that we will help the Ukraine as much as is possible, but that we also avoid that there will be a big conflict between Russia and NATO, and this is what is of essence, to be tough and thinking about the necessities of the time we are living in.
There are a lot of really big issues, and it's just great to be able to count on a strong progressive voice in Germany to lead us through.
The White House also said Russia had defaulted on its foreign sovereign bonds for the first time in decades, an assertion Moscow rejects. Sanctions have effectively cut Russia out of the global financial system. But the war has created difficulties for countries way beyond Russia's borders, with curtailed food and energy supplies hitting the global economy. These also include Ukrainian grain exports, now trapped in ports, which normally feed millions of people across the Middle East, Africa and elsewhere. G7 leaders are expected to discuss options for tackling rising energy prices and replacing Russian oil and gas imports, as well as further sanctions that do not exacerbate inflation.
The Kremlin has rejected claims it has defaulted on its external debt for the first time in more than a century, after a grace period on $100 million interest payments ran out. In a call with reporters, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia made bond payments due in May, but the fact that they had been blocked by Euroclear because of Western sanctions on Russia was not our problem, his words. Russia has struggled to keep up payments on $40 billion of outstanding bonds since its invasion of Ukraine on February 24, as sweeping sanctions have effectively cut off the country from the global financial system and rendered its assets untouchable to many investors. Russia has long said it has the money to pay, calling the default artificial, as sanctions block foreign bondholders from receiving the cash. Today, U.S. officials said the default showed how dramatically the sanctions are impacting Russia's economy. In the meantime, Russia's defense ministry spokesperson Konashenkov says Russian forces carried out large-scale attacks on 3 training centers of the Ukrainian army with high-precision weapons and caliber missiles. According to Konashenkov, the Russian army launched attacks on the 3 military centers located in Chernihiv, Zhytomyr and Lviv in Ukraine's west, which destroyed the battle capacities of Ukrainian strategic reserve forces that were being trained at the centers. Konashenkov said the armed forces in Luhansk have taken control of the cities of Severodonetsk, Borovsk, Voronovo and Sirodino, which together cover 145 square kilometers and have a combined population of 108,000 residents. He says the Ukrainian army tried once again to attack the Snake Island, a strategic area located in the Black Sea region, with aviation forces and rocket launchers, adding that the attack ultimately failed. A report released by the Ukrainian news agency on Sunday said Ukraine appointed military administrator in Donetsk, Pavlo Kirilenko, stated that the Russian military was gathering armed forces, heavy armored vehicles and weapons in the direction of Slavyansk, a major city in North Donetsk, and trying to approach the positions held by the Ukrainian side. Take a look at this video uploaded on social media, allegedly showing U.S. long-range rocket systems being fired by Ukrainian troops from an undisclosed location in Ukraine. Ukraine said last week it had received U.S. supplies of high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS for short, a powerful long-range weapon system that Kiev hopes can help turn the tide on Russia's invasion. The uploader of the video describes the weapon as a M142 HIMARS. Washington has said it has received assurances from Kiev that those longer-range weapons will not be used to attack Russian territory. Fearing an escalation of the conflict, Moscow has warned it will strike targets in Ukraine in the east in a bid to capture the industrial heartland known as the Donbass, where Ukraine fears some of its troops could be encircled in a Russian pincer. Moscow has warned it will strike targets where they've not yet been hitting if the West supplies longer-range missiles to Ukraine for use in high-precision mobile rocket systems. And NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the organization will massively increase the number of its forces at high readiness to over 300,000. NATO's Quick Reaction Force, the NATO Response Force, so far has some 40,000 troops. During the summit in Madrid, NATO will change its language on Russia, that in the alliance's last strategy from 2010, still described as a strategic partner. Stoltenberg said he would meet with the leaders of NATO, Turkey, Finland and Sweden on Tuesday before the Madrid summit to discuss the Nordic countries' bids to join the alliance.
Strengthen our forward defences. We will enhance our battle groups in the eastern part of the alliance up to brigade levels. We will transform the NATO response force and increase the number of our high readiness forces to well over 300,000. Strategic competition. I expect it will make clear that allies consider Russia as the most significant and direct threat to our security. I will not make any promises. But I can just assure you that we are working actively to ensure progress because the applications of Finland and Sweden to join NATO, they are historic. It will strengthen the security of Finland and Sweden. It will strengthen NATO, and it will be something that will contribute to stability across the Euro-Atlantic area, Europe and North America.
Let's bring in the VOA's Anna Chernikova in Kiev. Anna, I have so many questions. First of all, what's going on in Kiev at the moment? Over the weekend, Sunday especially, we understood that a number of missiles struck the Ukrainian capital. Tell us the situation now.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Well, it was really tough day yesterday as Ukrainians, and especially Kiev citizens, woke up with a flashback of the 24th of February because basically on the 24th of February, everyone in Ukraine woke up of explosions and the sound of explosions and with news about war. So yesterday, some Kiev citizens didn't wake up because at 6:30 a.m. local time, Russian missiles hit one of the civilian buildings, a residential building. It was already hit before, so basically it's just almost the same building that was hit previously. It just neighboring building to the one that was destroyed previously when the Ukrainian journalist died. So yesterday it was targeted again, and unfortunately we know that there is at least one victim for the moment, and more than 10 people are injured. We know that a little girl that was found under the rubble of the building was rescued, and she is now stable. Her mother was also rescued, but unfortunately her father died. So this is what we have for the moment. We know that rescue operation is ongoing, so it's still not finished. The city of Kiev and also yesterday, the kindergarten, which is located, private kindergarten, which is located just in that area as well, was also targeted. So it's thanks God that it was no one there on Sunday morning because this kindergarten is operating. So it is possible that if it happens not on the weekend, we could have more victims. So what we know that there is, the damages of the kindergarten are huge as well. So it's just a huge hole in the garden, on the territory of the kindergarten, and it's basically pretty much not functioning for the next couple of months. This is for sure. For the moment, situation in Kiev is stable, I would put it this way. Of course, it's nervous because there are air raid sirens very often, and every day we have at least 2, 3, 4 air raid sirens, especially during the evening time and early in the morning. And just a couple of hours ago, it was another air raid siren that resulted with attack on Kremenchuk.
I can't imagine how dreadful that might feel. And on to today, the city of Kremenchuk struck by missiles. We understand that there's a death toll now, and then there are a number of those who were wounded, a number of casualties. Tell us what happened there this morning or this evening, and what the situation is as well.
Yes, unfortunately, we can clearly see that it was a terroristic act. I cannot call it differently because it was just a shopping mall with no military, nothing connected to military area around. It was quite a big shopping mall, and we know for the moment that more than 1,000 people were inside. So it's really, as President Zelensky said, it's very hard to imagine how many victims we could expect. For the moment, we know about 2 people who died and 20 injured. Out of this, 29 people are in a very serious condition, but unfortunately, fire is still not stopped. So it's really scary to imagine what rescue team would find under the rubble when fire is stopped. So we're just waiting for for certain results, at least preliminary results. This is what we have for the moment. We know that Kremenchuk local government created a center for a special center for the relatives of people who were inside or were working in this mall, so they can either call or come physically and check on their relatives and friends. But I should say that it looks like this rescue operation would continue for a couple of days because the territory is huge. If I'm not mistaken, it's over 10,000 square meters, this mall, and it's really difficult to imagine, and it does happen in the middle of the day, almost. So it was around 4 p.m. local time, and it's quite a chaos now in Kremenchuk. So it's just the city is full of smog, full of this, fire smell, and ambulances and firefighters are just, going around. So it's quite a huge tragedy, and unfortunately we can say that this is a terroristic act by Russia. This is at least what we have for this minute.
And we know that while G7 leaders were meeting in Germany, those airstrikes, those missile strikes were hitting the Ukrainian capital. And you're looking at, the contrasts in the pictures. Leaders are meeting, they're having dinner, they're relaxed. And, Ukraine is going through so much. What goes through your mind as you watch, these conversations taking place outside of Ukraine regarding Ukraine, and then you see the difference in what's happening around you?
Well, Ukraine is and Ukrainian citizens quite get used to the fact that Russia is getting mad, and Putin probably in particular are getting mad when certain successful actions are taken by Ukraine in terms of either military operation in this war or on the diplomatic stage. And it's quite symbolic. It's bad to say, of course, but well, this is what we have. It's quite symbolic that Russian forces intensify attacks, especially when certain important decisions are taken on the international stage, and these decisions are definitely make huge advantage for Ukraine. So this last week was very important for Ukraine in terms of different areas, like Ukraine got EU candidacy, Ukraine had some successful military operations in the area of the Snake, Zmyiny Island, and also in the east, when Ukraine destroyed a huge convoy of the Russian troops, and the main base for Russian high military officials, which is located in Izum. So all this was happening, and at the same time, Russia is attacking civilian area, residential building in Kiev. Just enormous attacks on Kharkiv and Kharkiv region. We should not also forget about that, because Kharkiv is under just extreme artillery attack for the past week, I should say, and at least, and especially this last 2 days, today and yesterday, is just enormous. What's, the amount of attacks in Kharkiv. Also today in the morning, it was very heavy artillery attack on the Odessa region, the bordering region, and we know that the private sector of the residential area again was hit by Russian missiles. At least 69 private buildings were destroyed. 4 of them just burned down to ashes, and others just very seriously destroyed. Then we have J7 meeting today, and today the president of Moldova was visiting Ukraine, also having some successful conversation and negotiations with President Zelensky. And during her visit, we experienced Odessa attack and Kremenchuk attack, and also this, J7 meeting. So we can definitely see that Russia is just getting mad because apparently they are just feeling that they're losing on the diplomatic level, they're losing on the economic level, and they're losing well, on the political level as well, because the whole world can see what Russia is representing, and this is unfortunately not what civilized world well, you know, is looking for. So for Ukraine, you know, here inside the country, people understand that this is a price that Ukraine pays for its better future, for its European and civilized future, for its independence, for its normal life that Ukrainians want to get back as soon as possible. And again, this attack at Kremenchuk just shows that Russia is getting mad when people, even despite the war is going on, but people are trying to get back to normal, at least at the level, you know, they can. So they go to mall, they try to support economy, and then Russia hits, well, a shopping mall with 1,000 people inside. So for Ukraine, it's no way back. And EU candidacy is also another proof that it's no way back. Ukraine has already decided its direction very, well, many years ago, but this particular week was very, very important in this, you know, aspect. So Ukrainians ready to pay this price, because already a lot, you know, has been paid. A lot of blood has been paid in this war, and a lot of people have died. So Ukraine just want to get it done, and Ukraine don't want any preliminary results or any preliminary peace. Ukraine want final peace forever. So people are ready to pay this, you know, price and fight, continue to fight.
Yes, but everyone also wants, you know, peace at the end of the day. But as President Volodymyr Zelensky said this morning, he fears this war could continue until the winter, and that will be more devastating for the Ukrainian army. Right, right now it's summer, it's warmer. I mean, the conditions are much more bearable than if this was happening in the winter. So Ukraine also is asking for HIMARS, the long-range weapons, rockets that the U.S. is offering to give to Ukraine, but not the ones that are long enough or that go far enough as Russia. If Ukraine did get these weapons, where and what would be the targets?
For Ukraine, it's important that here, so the country can fight military bases which are used for this heavy attacks on the Ukrainian civilians and the Ukrainian peaceful cities. So in terms of HIMARS, we know that the systems are coming and more systems are coming. And in terms of the distance of the rocket that Ukraine will get for these HIMARS, in terms of the distance of these rockets, there are negotiations, and it might be that Ukraine would get longer range. Ukraine has no goal to attack Russian territory. Ukraine, I think that Ukrainian president, Ukrainian government, and just inside of the society as well, it's no goal. Ukraine wants to protect its land, and a lot of attacks, artillery attacks especially, that Russia is doing are happening either from the territory of occupied Ukrainian territory, or from the territory at the border, which is also, which are quite a lot, let's put it this way. So these rockets would definitely be used to destroy the bases that Russia uses for these rocket launches. We know that a lot of things are coming from Crimea, from Black Sea. So it looks like Ukrainian government and Ukrainian military officials are ready to probably strike these bases. But again, we're talking about the territory of Ukraine, the sovereign territory of Ukraine. So either occupied territory, but still Ukrainian territory. There is no, at least this is, what is official position, that it is not no goal to fight Russian territory, because Ukraine doesn't want to go into Russia and fight on the territory of Russia. Ukraine want Russian soldiers and Russian forces out from the territory of Ukraine.
So it does seem like, the stronger country here, Russia, using its might to intimidate Ukraine. Anna, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
On the world today, the rest of the world that is, forensic experts in South Africa are trying to determine what caused the deaths of 22 young people in a nightclub in the city of East London. Police have ruled out a crush and say the partygoers may have ingested a toxic substance. Most of the dead were teenagers, with some reported to have been celebrating the end of their examinations. Local officials said they feared it was a case of underage drinking gone wrong. President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed his condolences and said he was concerned the young people had gathered at a venue that should be off limits to people under the age of 18. Meanwhile, the relatives of those teenagers who died inside the club, the tavern, over the weekend said they are seeking justice. Yandiswa Ngosa, an aunt of one of the deceased, said her family is heartbroken and they're seeking justice because they do not know what happened. Pictures circulating on social media, still unverified by authorities, show the bodies of the youths lying scattered across the floor of the tavern, some also seen motionless, and tables and couches. A prayer service was held in memory of the deceased in the city of East London. Checking on the weather, a tornado in the south of the Netherlands has killed one person, also injured at least 10 others. That's according to the regional emergency services officials. Images of the tornado circling above the town of Zierikzee circulated widely on social media. Winds in a storm passing through the country at the same time were measured at around 75 kilometers per hour. A Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute has been keeping its eyes on that. According to the institute, tornadoes are rare in the Netherlands, but more common in summer months. And meantime, the town's mayor, Mayor Jack van der Hoek, is set to address journalists later today. Well, Japan has been scrambling to avert a looming power crunch as temperatures climb nationwide, with authorities warning of higher than expected demand and asking people to cut back on electricity use. Now, in Tokyo, staff of the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry worked without lights, and only one of 2 elevators were functioning in the afternoon when demand was likely to rise. An electronics store and television and lighting display units partially turned off. Temperatures are standing currently at 35.1 degrees Celsius. Weather officials say the end of the annual rainy season across much of Japan had come at its earliest since the data began to be kept in 1951. In 2018, the June 29 end of the season brought an extremely hot summer with several heat waves that put thousands of people in hospital. And in Sydney, Australia, climate change protesters marched today, forcing police to close major roads in the city centre. 11 people were arrested, including the woman who police said allegedly put a bicycle lock around her neck and the steering wheel of a vehicle that was blocking all city-bound lanes. A vehicle has since been removed. Dozens of members of Blockade Australia, a climate activist group, moved across major roads, causing peak-hour traffic chaos for motorists and pedestrians. Television footage showed how some people began throwing garbage bins on the road. Police estimated about 60 people were part of the protest. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres appeals to governments and companies to join the fight to save the world's dying oceans by committing more funds to helping to create a sustainable economic model for managing them. About 7,000 people are expected to attend the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, including heads of state, scientists and NGOs, to assess progress in implementing a directive to protect marine life. Mr. Guterres said there was a need for a symbiotic business model that could help the ocean produce more food and generate more renewable energy. The oceans cover about 70% of the planet's surface, generating 50% of the oxygen and absorbing all carbon dioxide emissions. But climate change is pushing ocean temperatures to record levels and making it even more acidic.
Sadly, we have taken the ocean for granted, and today we face what I would call an ocean emergency. We must turn the tide. Global heating is pushing ocean temperatures to record levels, creating fiercer and more frequent storms. Sea levels are rising. Low-lying island nations face inundation, as do many major coastal cities in the world. And some 8 million tons of plastic waste enter the oceans every year. Without drastic action, this plastic could overweight all the fish in the oceans by 2050.
Checking in on the aftermath of the earthquake, the 6.1 magnitude earthquake that hit Afghanistan. Taliban authorities, the UN, and other Afghan international agencies are coordinating efforts in response to the deadly earthquake, which killed more than 1,000 people in Afghanistan. Paktika and Khost provinces sustained extensive damages in last Wednesday's quake, which saw an estimated 10,000 homes destroyed. United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, initiated a meeting along with the Afghan interim government and several other organizations to establish a transparent framework to supervise and coordinate the disbursement of aid. Taliban authorities say the country will need a lot of help in the coming days. A UN representative says teams are on the ground and coordinating the humanitarian assistance. Well, in the United States, leading Democrats have been trying to turn Friday's Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade into a rallying cry for the November elections, warning of grim consequences for women, contraception, and gay marriage if Republicans regain control of Congress. Republican South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said they fixed a wrong decision that was made many years ago and now give the power back to the states. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren said the Supreme Court has lost its legitimacy and said Democrats need to take action to increase the number of justices to prevent the court's conservative majority from instituting further restrictions. In a 5-4 ruling powered by its conservative majority, the High Court overturned the 1973 landmark decision that had recognized a woman's right to an abortion and legalized it nationwide for nearly half a century. A decision was greeted as a stunning victory by anti-abortion Republicans and other conservatives, while Democrats and abortion rights activists protested what they described as a step backwards from the rights of American women.
What I would say is this was wonderful news in the defense of life. Every life is precious. South Dakota had a statute on the books that said that abortion would be illegal except to save the life of a mother should Roe v. Wade be overturned. And so that is how it stands here today. I'd encourage them to continue to follow the science, to continue to follow what we know to be true today with the technology that's been advanced, and to really look at the Supreme Court decision for what it is. Take the sensational pundit commentary out of it and look at the fact that what the Supreme Court did.
Now, I know that's something you support. Thank you.
It's happened before. We've done it before. We need to do it again. The whole idea is that women are not second-class citizens, and the government is not the one that will decide about the continuation of a pregnancy. There's no equivalent there for men. So what we believe is that access to abortion, like other medical procedures, should be available across the board to all people in this country. Now, we've got a lot of things on our agenda right now.
U.S. lawmakers reacting to the overturning of the Roe versus Wade ruling 50 years ago. Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, you have been following this story right from the start, and for many in America, this is about human rights, isn't it? Not just the right to an abortion.
Correct. This is about human rights and the right to choose. And I think where this is, I think the focus here is really about taking away something that, as you mentioned earlier, is almost half a century old, which is the right to choose. And we know that the U.S. has an unfortunate, challenging history as it relates to sexual abuse against women, as it relates to women's rights. And so this is really what the crux of many protesters are focusing in on. I know that a lot of the news surrounding it, and again, there is a basic fundamental principle issue wherever you sit on the coin of abortion rights and whether or not you believe in abortion. But most protesters are really focusing in on, as you stated before, the human rights component and the components of women's rights that have been so hardly fought for more than half a century here in the United States.
The pro-abortion rights campaigners, they're looking at this as, murder. I mean, it's a fetus, right? So you try to get that out and you're committing murder. But there are other aspects, of abortion, and that's, the health aspect where it begins to affect a mother's health, or the carrier of the pregnancy, the person's health. What are the issues are there around abortion that people are not talking about, and just looking at it in black and white and saying, this is bad, this is wrong, and not looking at the other issues that may affect people's decisions?
One of the very startling statistics that has obviously been talked about over this past week, and according to whoever has developed what considers a developing country, but if you look at what is considered a developing country, and the U.S. falls in line of that, we are the highest by almost double, in some areas triple, the morbidity and mortality rate of women with pregnancy. And so we already know that we are struggling from a developing country's perspective of women who are still dying at astronomical rates during pregnancy. So that's one of the greatest challenges that I think many scientists, many doctors, and many other women are looking at, is that, this is going to definitely increase the mortality rate of women with pregnancies, because you will begin to see a lot of what they consider back alley and illegal abortions will be beginning to occur again, which then puts women at risk. We already know that women that are in communities, disadvantaged communities, and especially women of color, are that much more likely to actually die at the hands of pregnancy, just due to the fact of access to appropriate health care and early health care for those women. And so we're definitely going to see this drastically impact the minority communities in the U.S., and especially those communities who could be dealing with and challenged with poverty.
And what is the medical society saying about this, Maria? I know that opinion is divided, but the better number of them, what do they think about the Supreme Court judgment?
Most of the medical community has discussed the fact that there has been great strides in medical effectiveness, and also the types of treatment for women as it relates to many women have complications with pregnancy. People aren't really talking about the fact that women who actually have miscarriages oftentimes need some of the medications that are used for abortion to be able to allow them to be able to live and sustain healthy lives, and if they ever want to get pregnant again, to move forward with that. So there's a host of I think, ramifications around the women's rights and the right to choose, and what is being considered the abortion rights issue that oftentimes is far beyond, as you stated before, just the black and white, as people have talked about the murder of a fetus, but really looking at the full aspects of healthcare in America and women's health in America.
It took 50 years to have this judgment upturned. Do you think there's any chance in the near future, perhaps in the future of our children, that this judgment could be upturned again?
You know, there's always possibility. The question is that, as you said, it took 50 years. We're now going to be looking at the states are going to begin to create their own various laws as it relates to abortion. There's going to be a long road ahead if it is looked to be overturned. And as you've talked about before, we're in the midst of getting ready for midterm elections. It really depends on what happens during those midterm elections and how the political landscape fares out over the next year and really 2 years as we look at the next presidential election. So it's not believed that it will be in the next 24 months or less, but whether or not it could happen in the next 4 to 5 years, that is a possibility, but it's really going to depend on the political landscape of the United States.
Maria, thanks again. We're still keeping our eyes open for more on that accident that happened in Colombia. 4 people dead, killed in fact, 70 more injured when a part of a stand collapsed at a bull ring in the town of El Espino in the provincial territories of Colombia. Videos posted on social media showed the section of the stand toppling forward into the ring, where locals were participating in a bull running event tied to the feast day of St. Peter and St. Paul. According to Tolima Provincial Governor Jose Ricardo Orozco, there are 4 dead at this moment, 2 women, a man and a minor. 70 people were injured during the collapse. According to local authorities, ambulances were sent from the nearby cities of Ibag and Melgar to help the injured, who have overwhelmed El Espinal's hospital. British lawyers involved in criminal trials staged a walkout today in a dispute over government funding, refusing to take on new cases or cover cases for colleagues which have overrun. Lawyers who act in criminal court cases say real earnings have collapsed, dropping 28% since 2006, with junior barristers earning a median income of only £12,200 in their first 3 years, forcing many to give up their career. The government said the walkouts were regrettable and that barristers had been offered a 15% pay rise. However, the Criminal Bar Association said the current proposal would not come in until the end of 2023 at the earliest. The CBA said the walkout is an attempt to prevent the collapse of a criminal justice system in crisis. British courts already have a backlog of some 58,000 cases, partly exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the CBA says the justice system has long been in a mess because of a shortage of lawyers.
But right now we are engulfed in a crisis of epic proportions that have never afflicted this country previously, which has brought almost to a standstill the system that we all love. Last year, we lost another 300 criminal barristers. Why? Because they could not do this job anymore on what they were being paid and for the hours that they were toiling. This must come to an end, and it will, if this government is prepared to sit down with us and negotiate. We cannot continue to work like this.
Looking at the domino effect of the war in Ukraine as governments react to a threat posed by rising food costs with bans. Although in Argentina it had a limited effect as some opted to change habits to dodge the relentless inflation. The war in Ukraine disrupted global agricultural exports from Russia and Ukraine, 2 grain exporting powerhouses, affecting other large suppliers such as Argentina. A Southern American country is the world's biggest soybean oil and meal exporter, the 2nd largest global provider of corn and a key wheat exporter as well. Although Argentina was already battling domestic inflation, now over 60%, after the war broke out, it took additional steps, enlarging the wave of export restrictions that at least 19 countries have imposed. A source in Argentina's agriculture ministry, who asked not to be identified because he was not an authority to speak to the media, said the government's priority was to safeguard the volumes needed for domestic consumption. In March, the government increased taxes on its soybean, oil and meal exports and implemented a lower cap than last year for new wheat exports. Despite these moves, the government has struggled to stem entrenched food price inflation. Well, food is not the problem in Spain, it's migration. It's shifting its foreign policy towards Africa while lobbying the EU and NATO for support to address this issue of migration from the African continent aggravated by the Ukraine invasion, according to two senior government officials and two diplomats who know about the matter. Now, Spain will use the June 29 to 30 NATO summit in Madrid to press its case and is likely to ask for increased intelligence sharing by the alliance, including on issues related to migration. Now, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez had revived a strategy mothballed by previous governments of working with African partners to contain migration and to tackle root causes such as instability and climate change. The drive has now taken on more urgency. Spain and its southern neighbors and EU officials are increasingly alarmed that a hunger crisis worsened by the disruption of Ukraine's grain exports will trigger chaotic migration from the Sahel and sub-Saharan regions of Africa, with numbers already on the rise this year. Well, let's head over to Sudan to meet the first Sudanese woman to participate in an African championship after winning bronze. Well, I do beg your pardon, we're in Egypt, where in a bid to turn clean energy, a hotel in Egypt's resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh is the first to operate a solar-powered plant, which they believe helps protect the environment.
A Red Sea hotel in Egypt's resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh initiated a solar-powered electricity generating panel in a bid to turn to clean energy as the city prepares to host the upcoming COP27 summit in November. Royal Albatross Badena Resort started to partially depend on a 1-megawatt solar power plant on the rooftop, prompting significant improvements in cutting carbon emissions and rationalizing consumption.
The main reason behind building this solar energy plant is to protect the environment, because this 1-megawatt solar power plants that have been established saves 140 tons of CO2. Secondly, from an economic point of view, it saves around 30% of the hotel's consumption of electricity for every 1 megawatt.
The Cairo-based project developer, Solar Sol Energy Company, aims to maximize on the high sun isolation Egypt requires.
For Corona, COVID-19.
It is very beneficial environmentally and economically. It will also add to the value of the hotel because of the low carbon footprint and high oxygen levels. Each 1 megawatt solar power plant saves around 1,300 tons of CO2 emissions per year. This creates a healthy community.
The low running cost of clean energy comes at a time when Egypt is struggling with lower tourism revenues amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine last February, which Moscow calls a special military operation. Ukrainian and Russian tourists had made up 31% of visitor numbers to Egypt before the war. Egypt takes over presidency of the UN climate talks from Britain. The summit takes place from November 7 to 18th in Sharm el-Sheikh. On May 19th, Egypt announced its National Climate Strategy 2050, which included plans to rely on renewable energy and to expand solar and wind projects.
And as we end the program, world-renowned action movie star Jackie Chan marked the 60th anniversary of his film debut with a live streaming on Saturday night, sharing some untold stories behind the iconic Police Story series while expressing gratitude for fans' support. With dedication, tenacity, and persistent pursuits, Jackie Chan had created many jaw-dropping action scenes, and there are also many hardships behind these astonishing clips. In the movie Police Story, there's a scene that Chan slides down from a height of dozens of meters by holding electric wires connected to a light on the ceiling, and this extremely dangerous action was done by himself. Jackie Chan's industrious and dedicated spirit has also influenced many younger actors. Years of acting and breath-holding movie scenes left Jackie Chan with scars on his body and injuries to his thighs and waist. However, Chan still insists on filming action movies as long as conditions permit. His profound affection of the field. He expresses gratitude to the fans for their continued support for the past 6 decades, saying he's proud to see the changes of his country. Well, there must be a lot of scars on his body. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.